Sullivan called his television show Toast of the Town. And over the years, the show and Sullivan became American institutions.
Just like America's Got Talent or The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, The Ed Sullivan Show is the father of those shows, featuring a huge number of exceptional talents like the Beatles, Elvis Presley, and even The Doors, among others. It combined music, comedy, magic, novelty acts, and celebrity interviews into a family-friendly Sunday night staple. But why would the F.B.I. get interested in taking down a show that brought in nothing but happiness and unity? Whatever may have happened, it was so serious that the show had to be taken down. So, buckle up and let's explore all about the Ed Sullivan Show and the reason the F.B.I. took the show down. About the Ed Sullivan Show. The Ed Sullivan Show was a classic American variety show that lit up CBS screens from the 20th of June, 1948 till the 28th of March, 1971, hosted by the legendary Ed Sullivan, who was a well-known entertainment columnist in New York. After its run, CBS replaced it with CBS Sunday Night Movie in September 1971. For more than 20 years, every Sunday evening from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time, many families gathered to watch an incredible display of talent on the show. It is one of the few shows that held the same time slot on the same network for a long time. Everything about the show was nothing short of spectacular, including the lineup, which featured everyone from classical musicians and opera singers to pop stars, ballet dancers, comedians, and even dramatic actors who delivered memorable monologues. It had a vaudeville vibe, bringing in many performers who had graced the vaudeville stage before it stopped. Ed Sullivan truly brought a world of entertainment right into our living rooms. The Ed Sullivan Show, which was originally co-created by Marlo Lewis, kicked off under the title Toast of the Town. But it was informally known as The Ed Sullivan Show long before it officially adopted that name on the 25th of September, 1955. When the show premiered on the 20th of June, 1948, it gave a memorable performance by Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis, with a skilled singer, Monica Lewis, and Broadway legends Richard Rodgers and Oscar Hammerstein II, who gave a sneak peek of their new musical, South Pacific, which would hit Broadway in 1949. From the beginning until 1962, the Lincoln Mercury division of the Ford Motor Company primarily sponsored the show, with Sullivan often reading live commercials for Mercury cars during the broadcasts. The show initially was live broadcast from CBS TV Studio 51, located at the Maxine Elliott Theater on Broadway and 39th Street. Soon enough, it got to its permanent home at CBS TV Studio 50 on 1697 Broadway, which they renamed as the Ed Sullivan Theater in June 1968 to celebrate the show's 20th anniversary. The final original episode aired on the 28th of March, 1971, and featured guests like Joanna Simon, Melanie, Danny Davis, and the Nashville Brass, and Sandler and Young. This marked the end of an era, as many beloved older shows were cut from the network that summer due to changing viewer demographics. Repeats continued to air until the 6th of June, 1971. Each week came with fresh and new talent. Sullivan welcomed back recurring favorites like his charming puppet sidekick Topo Gigio, who first appeared on the 9th of December 1962, and a ventriloquist named Senor Wences, who debuted even earlier on the 31st of December 1950. While most episodes were broadcast live from New York City, the show sometimes brought in live performances from places like the UK, Japan, and Australia. For many viewers, Ed Sullivan became a Sunday night tradition, serving as the very first introduction of international performers to American audiences. Also, there are some fantastic compilations featuring highlights from The Ed Sullivan Show, including titles like The 4 Complete Ed Sullivan Shows starring the Beatles, All 6 Ed Sullivan Shows starring the Rolling Stones, Elvis, The Ed Sullivan Show's Motown Gold from The Ed Sullivan Show, and Ed Sullivan's Rock and Roll Classics. In addition, there are 100 115 half-hour specials titled The Best of the Ed Sullivan Show. You can also find performances available for video and audio download, along with an app on iTunes. In 2021, MeTV started airing half-hour packages of these iconic performances every Sunday night, bringing the magic back to a new audience. The show was amazing right from the beginning. It had a lot of achievements before it met its end. A lot of questions need to be answered, but we need to look at the brains behind the show, Ed Sullivan. Let's get into that quickly. The brain behind the show. Ed was born on the 28th of September 1901 in Harlem, New York City, to his wonderful parents, Elizabeth and Peter Arthur Sullivan, who worked at the customs house. He had a twin brother named Daniel, who unfortunately passed away shortly after his birth. The family moved to Port Chester later on, in New York, where they lived in a cozy red brick house on Washington Street. Ed was always proud of his Irish roots, and music was an important part of their household, with the family gathering around the piano to sing or listen to records. In high school, he was an exceptional athlete, earning an impressive 12 letters at Port Chester High School. He played halfback in football, was a guard in basketball, and a sprinter in track. As a captain and catcher of the baseball team, he led them to multiple championships. Reflecting on his experiences with integration in sports, he stated that he got exposure to this in the New York high schools. He also recalled traveling to Connecticut and encountering teams with black players. For him, this experience boosted his belief that race had no bearing on a person's worth or ability, a perspective he held firmly throughout his life. Ed started his career at the Port Chester Daily Item, which was a local newspaper where he had contributed sports articles during high school. When he graduated, he continued working for the paper full-time. In 1919, he briefly worked for the Hartford Post, but it unfortunately shut down during his first week. Furthermore, he became a sports reporter for the New York Evening Mail. Unfortunately, the company closed in 1923, and then he started his career from one news job to another, with many publications, including the Associated Press, the Morning World, the Philadelphia Bulletin, and lots more. In 1927, he landed at the New York Evening Graphic, where he started as a sports writer and quickly moved up to sports editor. By 1929, when Walter Winchell moved to the Daily Mirror, Ed took on the role of a Broadway columnist for the Evening Graphic. Later on, he switched to the New York Daily News, where his column, named Little Old New York, focused on Broadway shows and the latest gossip. He also went into radio, giving frequent updates about the entertainment scene. In 1933, he wrote and starred in the movie titled Mr. Broadway, which took audiences on a tour of New York's nightlife to get to meet impressive stars and entertainers. It didn't take long for him to establish himself as a major figure in the entertainment industry, and then he became a key opponent of Walter. He made the El Morocco nightclub his other headquarters, while Walter handled the nearby Stork Club. Throughout his broadcasting career, Ed continued writing for the New York Daily News, and he arguably became more popular than Walter. In the late 1960s, he publicly acknowledged Walter's contributions in a magazine interview, which paved the way for an important reconciliation between the two former rivals. Throughout his career as a columnist, Ed explored various parts of entertainment. In the 1920s and 1930s, he produced vaudeville shows and served as the master of ceremonies, directed a radio program on the original WABC, and organized benefit performances for different causes. In 1948, a well-known producer named Marlo Lewis persuaded CBS to bring Ed on board as the host of a weekly Sunday night variety show called Toast of the Town, which would later be known as The Ed Sullivan Show. The show made its debut in June 1948, initially broadcasting from Maxine Elliott's Theater on West 39th Street in New York. Then, in January 1953, it relocated to CBS TV Studio 50 at 6097 Broadway, a former CBS radio playhouse. This venue was renamed the Ed Theater in 1967, which eventually became famous as the home of The Late Show with David Letterman and The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. As expected, television critics were not kind to Ed and his new show. One of them, named Harriet Van Horn, famously said that he got where he is not by having a personality, but by having no personality. In response, Ed bluntly wrote to her, calling her an inappropriate word that got everyone talking again. Critics also started pointing out his lack of acting ability. Even 20 years after the show debuted, a magazine named Time magazine asked the question, what exactly is Ed Sullivan's talent? His on-camera mannerisms were so peculiar that some viewers speculated he might be suffering from Bell's palsy. In a 1955 article, Time described him as resembling a cigar store Indian or a stone-faced monument just off the boat from Easter Island, saying he moved like someone who was always sleepwalking and had a smile like a man sucking a lemon. According to them, his speech was often tangled, and his eyes varied between sinking deep into their bags and popping out. But the magazine also stated that in spite of the bad things said about him, he also had a special charm that appealed to families without trying to intimidate viewers. A comedian, Fred Allen, once said, "Ed Sullivan will last as long as someone else has talent," while another frequent guest named Alan King observed him and said, "Ed does nothing, but he does it better than anyone else in television." A perfect episode of his show featured a mix of vaudeville acts like acrobats and jugglers, popular comedians, a singing star, a theater performer, and sometimes appearances by the beloved puppet Topo Gigio or a well-known athlete. The artists' lineup was often international, showing both American talents and numerous European performers. Ed had an amazing sense of humor about himself and welcomed performers like John Byner, Frank Gorshin, Rich Little, and especially Will Jordan to mimic him on his show. Johnny Carson also made a solid impression, and even Joan Rivers made fun of Ed's distinguished posture. These entertainers often exaggerated his raised shoulders, and nasal tenor voice, along with his memorable catchphrases like, "And now, right here on our stage, for all you youngsters out there," and his funny way of saying, "a really big shoe," instead of show. Interestingly, Ed rarely said the phrase "really big show" during the opening of the show. Rather, his impersonators made it very popular. Will portrayed Ed in several films, including I Wanna Hold Your Hand, The Buddy Holly Story, The Doors, Mr. Saturday Night, Down with Love, and a 1979 TV movie about Elvis. Ed also imitated himself and his mannerisms in Jerry Lewis's 1964 film titled The Patsy. Ed was such an influential figure that he inspired a song in the musical Bye Bye Birdie, and in 1963, he made a cameo as himself in the film adaptation. Additionally, in 1954, he co-hosted the television musical special General Foods' 25th anniversary show. A salute to Rodgers and Hammerstein. We have studied the man who created the incredible show, so let's go into the juicy part of the story. What really happened to the show? Who were the people who contributed to the taking down of the show? Hang on as we explore every part of this. Celebrities who got banned from the show. The Beatles, Elvis Presley, and other stars like Fred Astaire and the Jackson 5 found their big break on the Ed Sullivan Show. However, for every act that complied with Ed's demands, some refused to compromise their integrity to fit his vision. While a lot of these rebellious artists eventually became famous on their own, they found themselves permanently banned from Ed's stage. One musical act that messed up Ed's feathers during their first appearance was the Rolling Stones. When they came into the show to perform, Ed was taken aback by their ragged looks. He even seriously asked the band members to wash their hair and change their clothes, even though their rumpled style was a big part of their appeal to fans. Not only did Ed dislike their appearance, but he also asked them to change the lyrics of one of their songs, which became a common request on the show. Mick Jagger eventually succumbed to the suggestion, singing, "Let's spend some time together" instead of "Let's spend the night together." He made sure to roll his eyes dramatically, hinting at his feelings about the change. Ed may not have had a lot of love and respect for the band, but he acknowledged that they made an effort, and he allowed them to return to the show a total of 5 times after that initial performance. The Rolling Stones managed to navigate Ed's conservative expectations, playing by the rules despite the initial tension. But there have been other rebellious acts, like The Doors and Bob Dylan, who stood firm in their integrity when asked to compromise their image. When The Doors came on the show to perform a song titled Light My Fire, they faced a major challenge with the lyric "Girl, we couldn't get much higher," which was a clear approval of the use of illegal substances. The producers also requested that Jim Morrison change it to "Girl, we couldn't get much better." Jim initially pretended to comply, but once the performance started, he boldly sang the original line instead. Since it was live television, Ed Sullivan had no recourse but to ban the band afterward. When the Doors found out they wouldn't be returning to the show, they proudly shrugged it off, feeling they had already gained enough exposure from that one performance. And they turned out to be right. They had more appearances scheduled after their initial show, but those got canceled after they defied Ed's orders. Notably, the episode featuring The Doors cut to a commercial right after their performance, skipping the usual moment where Ed would shake hands with the guests. Another rock legend who felt Ed Sullivan's wrath was Bo Diddley. Another musician who got banned from the show was Bo Diddley. When he was set to perform on the show, he was ready to showcase his iconic song titled Bo Diddley. Just before he was set to perform, Ed asked him to play a different track. He chose the song 16 Tons, which Tennessee Ernie Ford made popular. Like The Doors later on, Bo initially seemed to agree to Ed's request, but switched back to his original plan as soon as the cameras rolled, playing his namesake song despite the host's wishes. As a result, he was banned from returning. After his performance, Ed made an inappropriate comment that drew unnecessary attention to Bo's race. Bo didn't take kindly to the remark, and it's likely he turned down any future chances to appear on the show, even if they were offered. However, just like The Doors, Bo's career remained largely unaffected by his showdown with Ed Sullivan. He is still celebrated as one of the foremost rock and roll musicians of his time. Buddy Holly is another musician who faced Ed's bad side. After already performing on the show with his band, The Crickets, Buddy had a less favorable experience during his second appearance. When Ed requested that they change one of their scheduled songs, Buddy and his band were not pleased. Noticing their bad attitude, Ed decided to sabotage their performance by cutting their set from one song to just two, mispronouncing Buddy's name, and even turning off his guitar microphone. Despite Ed's attempts at sabotage, the performance resonated well with the audience. Following the show, Ed agreed to let Buddy come back, but Buddy had no interest in returning. He famously declared that there wasn't enough money in the world to entice him back onto the Ed Sullivan Show. After Buddy Holly, Bob Dylan also faced Ed Sullivan's displeasure and never returned to the show. Like many acts before and after him, he was asked to change a song he had planned to perform. Bob intended to sing Talkin' John Birch Paranoid Blues, but after a rehearsal, CBS executives requested a change. Rather than compromise his integrity or defy the show's rules, Bob made the respectable choice to bow out, leaving Ed scrambling to fill his slot at the last minute. As a result, the Ed Sullivan Show never invited Bob Dylan back, though it's likely he wouldn't have wanted to return anyway. Not all guests who caught Ed's ire were musicians. Comedians also found themselves at odds with him. One notable comedian was Jackie Mason, who appeared on the show multiple times before being banned. During a performance in 1964, Jackie's set was abruptly cut short to accommodate a broadcast from then-President Lyndon B. Johnson, which further fueled tensions between him and Ed. When Ed signaled to Jackie Mason that his time was running out, Jackie responded with a hand gesture that Ed interpreted as inappropriate. This misunderstanding and his gesture led to Ed temporarily banning the beloved comedian from his show. Jackie eventually returned after apologizing, explaining that his gesture was not meant to offend. While Ed was quite particular about acceptable behavior on The Ed Sullivan Show, most musical acts chose to comply with his rules in exchange for the massive exposure the show provided. Now, we have taken a look at the celebrities who did a few inappropriate things on the show. These celebrities may have contributed to the fall of the show. Now, we have to look at the long-standing legacy of the legendary Ed Sullivan. Ed Sullivan's Legacy. He has been dead for several decades, but people still remember him for the show and his attitude towards people. Ed Sullivan once said, "Throughout the years of my show, I've never inquired about a performer's religion, race, or political views. I hire performers based solely on their talent. I believe this approach is one of the reasons our show has garnered such a diverse and loyal following." At first, Ed had reservations about Elvis Presley's controversial image, and he went so far as to tell the TV stations that he would never book him. However, as Elvis's fame skyrocketed, he became an unavoidable force in the entertainment world. In 1956, Ed relented and signed Elvis for 3 appearances on the show. Interestingly, just 6 weeks before that, in August 1956, Ed and his son-in-law, Robert Precht, who also produced the show, were involved in a serious car accident near Sullivan's country home in Southbury, Connecticut. This unfortunate incident caused them to miss Elvis's first appearance on the 9th of September, which was introduced by Charles Lawton. But when he got to know Elvis on a personal level, he changed his perspective about him. He publicly talked about this shift by telling his audience, "This is a real, decent, fine boy," showing that he had come to appreciate the young star beyond the initial concerns he had. After missing out on booking Elvis Presley, Ed Sullivan was determined not to let the next big sensation slip through his fingers. In November 1963, while at Heathrow Airport, he witnessed the frenzy of Beatlemania as the band returned from Sweden, with the terminal filled with ecstatic, screaming fans. Initially, Sullivan hesitated to book the Beatles since they hadn't yet released a commercially successful single in the US. However, after encouragement from his friend Sid Bernstein, he decided to take the plunge and sign them. What set Ed's show apart from many others of that era was his insistence that most musical acts perform live rather than lip-sync to their recordings. Of course, there were exceptions. For instance, during B.J. Thomas's 1969 performance of Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head, special effects required water to be sprinkled on him, making it impractical to use a microphone closely. Ed had a genuine admiration for black entertainers. He often showcased and appreciated them at a time when many television variety shows only featured acceptable black superstars like Louis Armstrong, Pearl Bailey, and Sammy Davis Jr. As biographer Gerald Nachman noted, in the early 1950s, long before it became trendy, Ed was already spotlighting lesser-known black performers he had discovered during his outings in Harlem. This included legends like Peg Leg Bates, Pigmeat Markham, and Tim Moore. These were artists who were largely unfamiliar to white audiences. Regardless of what happened between him and some musicians, Ed played a crucial role in introducing pioneering television appearances for a wide range of black artists like Bo Diddley, The Platters, Brooke Benton, Jackie Wilson, and Fats Domino. He also welcomed numerous Motown acts, with the Supremes making an impressive 17 appearances on his show. As a popular critic, John Leonard once stated, "There wasn't an important black artist who didn't appear on Ed's show," further highlighting his commitment to positive representation and diversity in entertainment. He also did all he could to support these musicians by standing firm against the pressure to exclude black entertainers or shy away from interacting with them on screen. As biographer Gerald Nachman noted, just like other people got their backlash, he faced constructive criticism from his sponsors, especially Ford's Lincoln dealers, after he kissed Pearl Bailey on the cheek and shook Nat King Cole's hand. According to Jerry Bowles, there was even an incident where Ed had to eject a Ford executive from the theater because he suggested that he reduce the number of black acts on the show. One dealer from Cleveland bluntly stated, "We realize that you got to have niggers on your show, but do you have to put your arm around Bilbo Jangles Robinson at the end of his dance?" This made Ed livid to the extent that he had to be physically restrained from attacking the man. In addition, his commitment to those performers went as far as raising funds for Robinson's funeral after his passing. During a CBS affiliates meeting in the late 1950s, a lot of Southern station managers brought their concerns about the number of similar people he was booking. In response, a furious Sullivan addressed their complaints directly in his presentation, declaring that any station manager who felt that way was free to drop the show. Not a single cancellation occurred. With deep reflection on his values, Ed said, "As a Catholic, it was inevitable that I would despise intolerance, because Catholics suffered more than their share of it. As I grew up, the causes of minorities became a part of me. Negroes and Jews were the minority causes closest at hand. I need no urging to take a plunge in and help." His commitment to inclusion and diversity was not just a professional choice, but a personal conviction, which was rooted in his own experiences. During a time when Western and country music had yet to find its place on television, Ed boldly featured Nashville performers on his show. This decision helped pave the way for future programs like Hee Haw and variety shows hosted by country legends such as Johnny Cash and Glenn Campbell. Among the many acts that graced the stage, the Canadian comedy duo Wayne and Schuster made history by appearing the most, with an impressive 67 performances between 1958 and 1969. He also made guest appearances on other television shows, which showcase his rare versatility. In April 1958, he appeared as himself in an episode of the CBS sitcom titled Mr. Adams and Eve, starring Howard Duff and Ida Lupino. Later, on the 14th of September, 1958, he also appeared as a mystery guest on What's My Line? In 1961, he stepped in for Red Skelton on The Red Skelton Show, taking on Skelton's roles in various comedy sketches. Notably, Skelton's beloved hobo character, Freddie the Freeloader, was renamed Eddie the Freeloader for Sullivan's stint. Like many American entertainers of his time, Ed Sullivan found himself entangled in the Cold War's anti-communist fervor during the late 1940s and 1950s. A notable incident occurred in January 1950 when a tap dancer, Paul Draper, was set to appear on the show Toast of the Town. An activist, Hester McCullough, opposed Paul, saying he was a communist sympathizer and urged Ed's main sponsor, Ford Motor Company, to cancel his performance. Despite Paul denying the accusations and going on with the show, Ford received over 1,000 angry letters, and this prompted Paul to assure the company that he would avoid guests who would bring controversy in the future. Unfortunately, Paul was forced to move to Europe to continue his career. This was still fresh, but Ed started working closely with Theodore Kirkpatrick from the anti-communist newsletter Counterattack. This Cold War's impact was again felt in May 1963, when Bob Dylan was scheduled to perform Talkin' John Birch Paranoid Blues, which critiqued the John Birch Society. While there were no objections during rehearsals, CBS's Standards and Practices ultimately rejected the song on the day of the broadcast, fearing legal repercussions. Dylan refused to perform anything else, leading to significant media attention, and Sullivan publicly criticized the network's decision. Ed's clashes with practices and standards were beyond Dylan. In 1956, he invited an actress named Ingrid Bergman, who had been in exile due to a scandal, to appear on his show after the release of her film Anastasia. He even traveled to Europe to film an interview with her and other stars. However, upon his return, Standards and Practices prohibited her appearance. Despite this setback, Sullivan's intuition about Bergman's comeback proved correct. She later won her second Academy Award for Anastasia and was welcomed back by audiences. Ed Sullivan directed a lot of special shows in his lifetime and served as the president of Theatre Authority, Inc. After the passing of his wife in March 1973, he joined his wife the following year, on the 13th of October 1974, at the age of 73, due to esophageal cancer. The Museum of Broadcast Communication states that Ed got involved in more than 10,000 acts throughout his career. His variety show clips remain very popular and are still discussed and praised today. What are your thoughts on the criticism the Ed Sullivan Show faced? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. To enjoy more exciting videos like this, like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you get notified when a new video drops.